Okay, let's try it one more time.
How long have we been talking for?
Well, that was 29 minutes. Okay, so again, the editing, Gabor Mate. Dr. Gabor Mate. The camera keeps turning off. Hopefully it won't turn off again. All these things. I shouldn't have bought this camera, but it was recommended by like these top vlogs people and like these tech people when it comes to blogging.
Salespeople.
Yeah, it's a great camera. However, it'll turn off at 29 minutes, which is definitely not great for my show. But anyway, Dr. Gabor Mate has written several books. One of them is called In the Hungry Realm of Ghosts, which is all about addictions. And he challenges the way we think about addictions. And he says we need to stop asking why the addiction and start asking why the pain. Because all addictions are rooted in pain. They might not be all rooted in trauma, but they're all rooted in pain. Because our nervous system is seeking calm, right? So, our nervous system wants to be calm, and if we don't know how to self-soothe, we may be, addicted to shopping or what, so many things. Like people vilify alcohol or drugs or porn or all of these addictions, which, I get it, we want to vilify them, but if we stop vilifying them and become curious to understand like the root causes. So anyway, he's written that book. Another one is Scattered, which is about ADHD, because he has ADHD himself. And another book that I love is When the Body Says No. And it talks about if we are people pleasers all of our lives and have not learned to say no and set boundaries, then our body will tell that story in disease and illness. Fascinating read.
Wow.
Yeah, but anyway, he really talks about turning in, it's like if you want to do the work and if you're not afraid, like that's where the healing comes from. So just asking those questions. So when we feel activated or we have a situation that's frustrating and it's turning inwards and it's going, I wonder what's going on within me. Why am I responding that way? And it's served me quite well. So anyway.
Okay, a book recommendation. I did not come prepared with a book recommendation, but a terminology.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of peptide addictions?
What is it?
Peptide addictions.
Peptide addictions. I have not. Tell me.
Google it.
That's cool. Tell me.
Peptide addictions are very interesting. I don't want to, muddle it too much, but basically your body craves certain chemical responses and it desires to have those chemical responses, good or bad.
Sure.
Since it's been recorded, I won't go into too much because I don't want to get fact check the hell out of me, but just look into it.
Okay.
It's an interesting thing that, we will create situations where we're feeling those needs and your body can't really tell the difference whether it's getting say the endorphins from a good or a bad experience. It just wants it.
Yeah.
So it delves into a lot of psychology, pattern behavior, and why we recreate those instances, self-sabotage and all those other things, to feel good or bad. You know what I mean? Some people like feeling bad, too.
It's true. And the reason why is familiarity. I can say that is true. Our bodies crave familiarity. And so it's true. There's so many times where I worked with the community and people and, the surface level would be like, well, this person just loves drama. And I would be really bothered by that phrase in general, just because I just if somebody grows up in chaos, that chaos feels good to them. So you can't just take them out of the chaos. They have to work to be out of the chaos if they want to be out of the chaos, because that chaos can feel comfortable because of exactly what you're saying, right? But a logical brain will go, I don't want to do that. Why would I want to do that? But you have to bring the subconscious to the conscious, which is why it's hard to create new patterns.
I think if we think about what pleasure actually is and stuff, and sometimes it actually is painful. I'm trying to do this in the most PG way possible and describe
It's not
this.
technically made for kids.
I know, but because of the nature of what I do,
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. No, I get it. Be very careful.
Yeah, so, think about some of the things that are the most pleasurable things that you experience. The things that most people that probably come to mind, no pun intended, it's painful. If we're being honest about it, it's painful. I don't know for women, but I know for dudes, like, it hurts. And so, like, there's an aspect of release there. Like, that relief of, oh, like, kind of like, I'm glad that's over, but I want to get back on that ride again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because it releases...
climactic feeling. But, like, the actual physical part, like, yeah, like, it feels good, but, we can admit, like, it hurts, too. Like, at the same time. So, it's a really interesting experience. Almost like, this is probably a poor choice of words, but like a sneeze. Like, when you sneeze, you have that relief afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that builds up of pressure. Yeah. Allergies.
Right?
But, yeah, it's allergy season. Yeah, so, but more seriously, I recognize that for me, I like the little painful aspects of relationships and stuff too. And not because, like I have some kink or something. It's just, I like the honesty and the realness of it and the vulnerability. And I think I'm more inclined and drawn to that. And that becomes a problem later on. Because at some point, if you can't fix it, you have to live with it. And if you have to live with it, do you live with it by fixing it or accepting it? And whose responsibility is it? Who's culpable? Like, and what if it doesn't happen? Do you still, invest in that relationship, or do you move on? And that's, for me, I think that's one of the most difficult things is seeing, struggling, but seeing how much support there is to actually move on. Like, it's like, that's all the rage. Like, move on, cut your losses, let go. It's almost like for a hopeless or a hopeful romantic like myself, it's depressing. Like, when you realize how many things are stacked up against you and your relationship. But I have to remind myself too, and this is something that someone who I love tells me about. It's like, our relationship is between us. It just never feels that way. When you have the whole world and every other relationship kind of in competition with that sometimes. Like, do you apply the same boundaries and standards to coworkers, strangers, parents, as you do in your relationship? I think recognizing those discrepancies when you're growing, you're either going to extend some grace or you're going to discover some things about yourself, and your partner and how you truly engage with them in relation to others. And I think that's a good place to kind of focus. Like, am I giving my partner my best, or am I giving my work my best and my partner's getting what's left? Or am I giving them a hard time and I'm making it easy for others because I want to impress them? Or whatever the situation is, just having an accurate assessment of how you're approaching your partner, yeah.
Well, and I just think it comes down to individual, how are you showing up, and how are we showing up to situations and things? Because the only thing we can have control of is ourselves and our thoughts and what it is. And, we can't change anybody else ever. It sucks, but we can't. But, I
think we can influence people. We can have an impact on them. Like, I was with someone who was a smoker. Now, granted, I didn't stop them from smoking, but I expressed my concerns. I've, was supportive of their efforts to not smoke, encourage them not to smoke. They're not a smoker. They haven't been for, years. Did I cause them to change? No, but I caused them to maybe give pause or thought to, or, opened up an opportunity for them to change or want to change potentially. And, I did it out of concern. But it was a conversation that was had. Ultimately, they made the change, but I don't know. I wouldn't say I had nothing to do with it, but I definitely wouldn't take credit for it because, they could have flip-flopped,
Yeah. Well, and I think we can influence people. I think that's totally valid. I just know, and this is just me sharing, growing up, I wanted my mom to quit drinking. And so I would dump her alcohol down the sink. And now as an adult, I'm like, holy shit, that was expensive.
Right.
Sorry, as I'm swearing on camera. But, I couldn't get her to quit. I wanted her to. I would have conversations. Here I am, this young girl, just wanting my mom to be present with me, and she wouldn't. And as an adult who had to be alongside of my mom as she was terminal for 2 years, and just really understanding where she was at and why she was doing what she was doing. I mean, I couldn't fix that. I couldn't do that for her. And it was really hard. But the biggest thing that I learned from that is, like, I can't do anything but love people for where they're at. And for me, the biggest influence is being seen and heard. And that's, for me, how I changed the most. When somebody gave me the ability to be heard and to be cared for, with no judgment, with no hidden agenda, that's when I moved forward in my own life. But everybody's different. I do think we have influence. Yeah, I think influence can be helpful. I mean, I think I've influenced a lot of people just by showing up and being there for them and letting them know that I care, because I do, from the bottom of my heart. I mean, I couldn't force my mom to quit, but yeah, it was a hard reality. It was a hard lesson, and I learned.
Yeah, it's hard trying to be like the voice of reason to like people that you care about, you know. I would say it's like, if you're being honest with someone, and you should, you're the one taking the risk. You know, the world of supporters and then people who have their ear for the moment but aren't necessarily in the relationship, they don't have to do anything but kind of agree or be appeasing. They're not risking any vulnerability in disagreement. So in relationships, like, you know, just not to, you know, not necessarily with your mother, but like,
Sure.
say in a relationship with a partner or something, and there's something that you disagree with, you know, and it's a big disagreement. There's people in queue in line just waiting, and they just know, oh, all I have to do is just, one, not be that person. Two, allow them to feel seen or heard, but they're not risking anything by being honest. They just know, if I just ride this out, I'm going to get a positive response, because all they really want is someone to probably make them feel like they're valued and or all these other things, but they're not taking any actual risk.
But are they making that person feel seen and heard as an agenda? Like, oh, if I just pretend to do this? Like,
that's like all the rage right now.
So that's, like, then for me, my question would be back to whomever is like, if that's what's going on, then the question goes, okay, I see where this person's at.
I guess I should have prefaced that like as a question, because I don't have a whole lot of dating experience per se, because I've been married. But I should have asked, how do you handle, you know, basically just presenting something difficult to a partner, knowing that there's so many people that could just align differently? Like, how do you compete with being the honest one when there's so many people willing to just be disingenuous or just, you know, just agree? Like, people are they morph into these ideals that they think that you believe or that are going to get a yes, you know? And I've noticed that about the dating scene that I'm around but not in, but I'm having to entertain the idea of like, oh, well, if things go really bad, you might be out there in the fray just like everyone else. So it's like, that's not really, to go back to the pool analogy, that's not really the shallow waters that I want to be in. But it's a reality that, you know, I face, like most people who are struggling, you know. So, yeah, I just wonder, how would you deal with just that looming thought? Like, I probably obsess over it. I'm not going to lie. I don't like the idea that someone else can just be different or new, and that's a reprieve from all the hard work and effort that may not be valued the same way that it used to be. Like, I think we lose a lot of our luster over years of, you know, fighting and arguing, and, you know, some people just want to break from that. And unfortunately, I think they take a break from the person instead of finding the root cause and like trying to get back to repairing that and moving forward with that person. I think the option is typically supported is move on without that person. Like, if you could go back, and not to say that, you know, that's always the best course of action, but if you could go back, would you want to try to move forward with that person if they were, you know, willing, you know?
This is going to be a harsh answer. No. Well, here's why. Here's why. We spent 4 years in professional therapy. 4 years. And
What was the goal?
I was doing the work that I needed to do. I'm imperfect. I would be mad. I would be totally upset if they didn't pick up their socks or their underwear and I didn't ask them to pick it up. And, you know, so I had all this looming anger that this person should just know what I needed. And my therapist was like, you do not have any right to be mad at somebody if you do not effectively communicate what you need from them. And that was difficult because I grew up with my mom who was passive aggressive in the fact that she wanted my dad to do certain things, but she would never ask him. So she would stew and be angry. And so I totally took that into my marriage. And so my therapist was like, you can't be mad at him. So I had to do my work. And in 4 years, when nothing had changed, and we came together here, I'm up here and they're down here, and I was done. I'm not going to spend my life in a place where I don't feel happy. I don't want to give up who I am. I missed who I was. I lost a sense of who I was. I am a fun, bubbly, outgoing person, and I was depressed. I was on antidepressants. I just lost a sense of who I was. But you know what? I spent 4 years trying to work really hard at something, and it didn't change. So for me, my answer was to move forward and to live my life for myself. So I don't know if you like that answer, but I was done. I did what I could. You can't force people to change. So that's why I was like, no, I'm out of here.
That's a good, honest answer. I realized, something about myself too. Like, I'm not good at letting go or quitting. Like, literally, it's almost the equivalent of failure to me. And I think that I brought that into my relationship and certain aspects of what I do, where I've had a lot of success by not giving up, by being resilient and doing all these things. But when you're dealing with emotions and people's hearts and things like that, it's a different kind of feeling and approach. It's not like you get that predictable response. Mm-hmm. Like, if anything, I think when you try to be consistent, like people say, I think it causes people sometimes to be a little bit more erratic, because if you're doing the things and making the changes and the goalposts are being moved, it's like, well, wait a minute, what's going on here? I thought you wanted this, and if you said, if I did this, then this would happen. It doesn't always happen like that. I've never been great at giving up. It's not really something I think I want to be good at, but it probably would be a little bit relieving to be able to have that capacity, but it's just not the cloth I was cut from, you know what I mean? Like, I think back at how my parents survived for as long as they did, considering the things that they went through. So for me, it was like, oh, well, this should be a cakewalk. Like, do you know the stuff that went down in their life, So I brought that to my partner's attention, and I was like, wow, I'm pretty sure your parents have been through a whole lot of hell too, in some regards, and maybe stuff you don't even know about. But I think we really need to take a look at how our ideas of relationships and everything were forged in these fires that we didn't create. You know what I mean? Like, let's really look at that and think about what we're doing and how we're doing it, and now should we do it? And like I said, I'm not the type of person to just give up. Like, you can't ask me to do that. Like, I can't forfeit something that I want. Like, I'm not one of those. But
that's a two-way street.
Yeah,
they don't want it.
True, that's one thing. But I think there's a lot of pressure, because, like, the old, well, if you love them, let them go. That's one of the weirdest things I've ever heard in my life. For me, like, if you love them, let them, what? Like, I don't know. That's just backwards to me. I think that's the reverse of like the machismo kind of thing, and it absolves people from the hard work of really trying to figure out, well, how do you welcome them to stay? Not
They might
force
not be
them to
ready
stay, but
to
welcome
be
them to
stay.
stay.
They might not
They
be
might not.
ready for that.
But I think trying, like,
But that's
for me.
from your perspective.
Yeah.
That might not be the other person's perspective. And how do we come together with collaboration? Because you can't force somebody to be there. I mean,
Right.
I know, and I hear what you're saying. Like, I don't want to give up. And there's two people. You can't force somebody into doing that. Like, it's not.
Well, I mean, you're not, if they're already there, you're not forcing it. It's not like someone new. You know what I mean? Like, if you're in a relationship, I feel like there's an onus to try to stay in that relationship if you decide to get in it. You know, you should want to. And so you should find ways to want to. Just like, if you want to keep your job.
But everybody doesn't think the way you do.
I know, and that's a problem for me.
Well,
Absolutely.
And I'm not trying to cut you off, but it's like, it goes back into that empathy piece. Like, you have to understand other people's perspective and where they're coming from. And a lot of times it might not be about us. I have been, before I realized this goodness, before I came into my confidence, I'm telling you this true story, because I had the kindest man in my life. He would bring me flowers to my work. He would bring me hot chocolate because I didn't drink coffee at that time. He was the kindest soul to me, and he was good looking. And in my mind, I'm like, he doesn't like me. Why would he ever like me? I'm a fat, ugly girl. So let me tell you, because I didn't feel worthy of the love he was giving me, I wanted him out. And so I ended up choosing somebody who wasn't as kind to me. And it wasn't about him. It was where I was at. And I couldn't accept the love that he was giving me. And I don't know what situation. I'm just telling you, like, there are many men that I've met on my journey in the last 11 years who have been phenomenal men who have walked out of my life. And it was painful. And I can't force them to stay. But there were several of them who would say to me, you deserve somebody who's way better. You deserve somebody who is better than I am. So I don't, people do things because wherever they're at, it's like, who knows what's really going on? And I don't know, people have to know who they are. And if they're, if opinions of others can infiltrate them, then that's just where they're at. And that's just where they're at.
Yeah.
I don't know if that helps, but that's just my perspective. But I've also worked 7 years being trained in stuff like this. Communication in relationships is definitely, I taught collaborative problem solving for 5 years, which is all about collectively coming together when you have two opposing sides and really negotiating that. So, I mean, if that's a question you want, then come with empathy. You have to come with that question of, help me understand what's going on here. And create a safe enough space to get to the truth. And then when you have their concern on the table and your concern on the table, that's when you bring them together and go, okay, well, I hear your concern is this. My concern is this. I wonder what we can do to collaborate with this. That's collaborative problem solving. And I taught that, like I said, for 5 years. And it's amazing. You have to come with that empathy, though. And it doesn't mean that the other person might. I don't know. But it's about coming together with those different perspectives and trying to figure out a solution together. But it's back and forth. It's not always one answer. It's a collaboration of how do we move forward with this together, even if we're opposing sides. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
We should probably, I was just going on an hour, so.
Yeah, well, I would say this. Definitely have a bigger cup of coffee if you're going to have a conversation.
I know,
for sure. For continuity purposes, I have both.
I am empty. Anyway, it's been so much fun. Let's have another conversation.
Absolutely.
And, all power to you. And, I'm your friend. I'm here. I'll listen and I care. And it's hard. Relationships are hard. I wish it were easier, but the reality is we all come to relationships from our own childhood experiences, from our lived experiences, and we do what is familiar. And so until we come to the conscious of who we are, the patterns that we have are guided by our lived experiences from childhood. good or bad. So it's really about
A little bit of both.
Yeah, it's really about becoming aware of who we are. And again, that's why I talk about, you know, the question of what is it that I want? Trying to really figure out what you need in your own life, because we can't steer anybody else's ship. All we can do is come alongside people and be present, but it doesn't mean that that's going to be reciprocated. Case in point, 11 years single. And that's on a book. I'm writing that book, so I will get that out and publish. So don't forget to check that out. I'll let you guys know.
Yeah, I'll have to get an advanced copy and look through those pages. Like, oh.
Yeah, well, I'm writing it in the style of what I learned and really giving people also questions for their own growth, because I went from being insecure to confident in 11 years of dating. I share a lot of my experiences of my self-hatred and how I got to where I'm at now, and it was a lot of work. But I think I just want people to feel loved and cared for, because our world is harsh. It's a harsh world out there. So.
Yep, stay hydrated and find that love,
Have a beautiful day. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you soon. Bye.